So you're actually known for being an amazing connector of people, and you're always working with the top industry leaders. When you were back at high school, were you the most popular kid in school? Can you take me back to those years and describe a bit about what you were like back then?
Yeah, it's funny because I've been thinking about that lately because it's certainly become more and more as what I do, and part of it is definitely natural. Um, in junior high and high school, I was always like part of a bunch of different cliques, but I was never like really deep into any one clique. So I could always hang out with the jocks or the stoners or it feels like the Ferris Bueller movie or whoever, but it was, yeah, I mean, I could naturally kind of move around all of them for sure, but I was never really deep with one of them. I never identified with one particular group, and that's, the exact same thing today. I mean, it's pretty interesting. It's like, so I got my start in internet marketing world, but I don't just hang out with internet marketers. I mean, I'm hanging out with, I don't know, I mean, going to, of course, to very ostensibly name drop. I mean, hanging out with Richard Branson on Necker Island is, that's at the top of the list. And then, guys like Tony Hsieh from Zappos or people like that who are in different worlds in the industry. And so it's always been fun to me. And it's been interesting to be able to put them together in different situations like that.
So what do you think the secret to that is then? Because, some people kind of stick with a small group of people that they know and they find it difficult to move to a different group or to go out of their comfort zone. What do you think the secret to being able to move around and communicate with people like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've certainly thought about that, like if it's something that's teachable or if it's something that's like kind of a natural ability to just be a sort of an intermediary. And I think it's partially both, and I think you can definitely set yourself up to do it in a big way. Like, I've always thought about how I've become the hub for a lot of different things. And you can totally do that exact same thing in your life and in your business. So I put on a couple different events every year, and that, almost creates this nice little halo effect with people that show up for the event, and if they do a deal together, they meet the right person, they attribute it back to me. And whether or not that's totally true, and I might not even see them there, or I might not even know that they've come up with that connection. But I definitely do work on creating a really good atmosphere that creates those connections. So that attribution would be correct, but creating that hub, like even like I was talking to one woman in Maui. I was there a couple months ago for an event I was speaking at. And she had just moved to Maui, and she was a copywriter, and we were talking about how she wanted to get integrated more into the community. And I'm like, well, what if you just did a dinner once a month that was like the community she wanted to get more into artists, entrepreneurs, and somebody else, I forgot who it was. And I'm like, just do a great dinner once a month, even if you got to pay for it, or find the sponsor that's willing to pay for it, or whatever the case is. But setting up that atmosphere to make it a really great connection point, and then you become that hub, or obviously putting on your own events like I do. And we do a different job with the events, and we really try to make it experiential and not just a learning event. Anybody can do a learning event, and that's one thing. And obviously if you curate a great group of speakers and content, that's one thing. But if you really create an experience for people, they remember that, and that creates a much more meaningful connection for the people that they meet. And then once again, they attribute it back to you, really. So that's one thing that I do. And I've always been extremely generous with introductions, and I'm always asking, what are you looking for, or what's your current problem or situation, and I'm always kind of thinking about who I can connect them to. And it's not quid pro quo. I'm not looking for like them to be like, oh, well, who can I connect you to? I truly enjoy that, and I think it has long-term implications. I mean, it just comes from probably having more of an abundance mindset than a scarcity mindset, and those are just simple things that you can do that if you can be that connection point, you'll do better.
Going back to your school years, how would you have described your personality back there? What kind of interests did you have?
It's funny. I was always a bit of the class clown. I was totally the guy that would sit in the back of the room and just make smart aleck remarks. And I don't think that's changed. That goofiness and that silliness, I've always kept that, and I think that's one reason people certainly like being around me. And it's not a forced thing, and so I'm certainly an instigator of mischief, I guess, and that's always been the case from early on. As far as the confidence, I don't know. I don't think I was an extremely confident kid, but I also wasn't like an extremely just not confident kid. I think somewhere in the middle, and it's certainly grown. I think my confidence has grown in relation to actual accomplishments. So as I'm a big believer in taking responsibility for your own actions and your own success and your own failure and so forth, and instead of trying to push blame on anyone else or situations. So I think that's increased my confidence, because knowing that I'm the one that controls my destiny in a sense, and so that's it's certainly kept going up and up, based on merit and not just based on, I don't know, something superficial, I think.
So you were talking then about mischief. So were you sort of always like, veering out of bounds? Were you kind of straying away from home and getting up to mischief outside of school, taking risks?
I was a very good kid that didn't get caught doing bad things. Or most of the time didn't get caught doing bad things. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would get into all sorts of trouble, but at the same time, I kind of knew what the limits were, and then also what how to make sure that it wasn't something it couldn't be repaired, and I couldn't go back and fix it. But no, I wasn't like running off. I wasn't like this problem child or anything like that. I was definitely a good kid, but yeah, at the same time, it's just funny. Like, yeah, looking back at what I would do. I mean, I would steal my brother's car when I was like 14 years old instead of when you're 16, or I think I was maybe 15. But I put it back in the same spot and made sure that nobody knew that I took it, or might have a big party at my house when my parents were gone, but made sure that I cleaned up everything that they wouldn't find anything. So certainly testing the limits.
These days you're always doing these high octane activities. What actually goes through your mind? How do you overcome your fear?
The fear is part of the fun of it. I think it makes you feel like you're alive, and that you got that adrenaline certainly going through you. I look at it as a way to push my boundaries and to see how much further I can really go, and also create these cool, challenging just aspects for myself. I mean, I learned how to scuba dive within like 2 weeks, and then instead of like going on a nice cushy scuba dive in 80-degree water or 70-degree water, we went into 3-degree water in between tectonic plates in Iceland, where there's like 300 earthquakes, mini earthquakes every single day in this one park. And you got to wear this dry suit, and it's totally claustrophobic, and it closes off everything here, and you got to wear a hood. And I mean, it's totally like diving off of the deep end, and that was fun and interesting to me. And then we've done like a halo skydive, where I've done a skydive from 30,000 feet, which is a cruising altitude of a normal jet, and that's a military maneuver that they do to insert troops in there, kind of below radar detection. And I don't know, all that stuff is just interesting to me to see, but I don't know, it's kind of funny as I'm thinking about it right now. It's not like I'm deep into any of those, right? Like, I don't go scuba diving every weekend, and I don't go skydiving every weekend. I don't have like 150 jumps out under my belt, but I just like almost like the little clicks. I like going from activity to activity, trying it out, and then just getting deep into some of the stuff that we're doing, or not even deep, but just trying out different stuff.
So it's testing yourself, then challenging yourself with...
Yeah, that's part of it. And new experiences, for sure. I mean, I definitely thrive on variety, and that's why I love new ideas and seeing which ideas we can turn into actual profits and so forth. So yeah, I think definitely the variety and the challenges, and then just that fun part of it. And it carries over to like the rest of your life. It's like at some point you're going to be sitting on maybe a metaphorical edge, or you're going to be, or a very real edge. Like if you're going to go bungee jumping, they give you, you know, that 3, 2, 1 countdown, and it's like, you know, leap and take that small bit of faith, and like in a business, it's a leap. You know, I read your story, Angel, when you basically, you know, moved and took that leap of faith, and I bet that the net sort of appeared for you, or like serendipitous stuff occurred that you never would have imagined. And so I see that with these kind of, I don't know, extreme activities, or people might call them extreme activities, but it creates a really good, I don't know, just a real good life experience.
Yeah. So when you're before you actually do them, do you actually think of the outcome? Do you ever go through the scenarios, or do you think that's what stops people doing these things, if they actually are focusing more on things that could go wrong?
Yeah, I think my wife definitely goes through more of the scenarios in her head than I do. I got a really good life insurance policy, and I have 2 little kids. And I mean, I even had like some of my friends before I did the Halo Skydive who called me and emailed me. They're like, you know, you got 2 little kids. You should really think about what you're doing. And my response to them is that you can't control the way that you die, but you can control the way that you live. And if you never really truly live, then what kind of example are you setting for your kids or the people around you? And if you're always just thinking about what could be the possibility of something going wrong, or something not happening, or that you know that you get killed in an accident. I mean, you can get killed. Obviously, I mean, people talk about this all the time. You can get killed walking down the street, but how many people truly live? And that's a big deal to me. Is I want to experience all that life has, and I want to have that legacy for my kids, and hopefully anyone else who follows some of the stuff that I do. That you really can create those experiences for yourself and your life.
So what was it like growing up in your household then? What kind of lessons did you learn about money and business?
I grew up, you know, one of my first business mentors, I guess, or heroes is my dad. We came over from Russia when I was 2.5, and from here to the U.S., and he had $256 in his pocket, and, you know, not much command of the English language, so kind of a typical immigrant success story. And very quickly he started this medical equipment service company, and doing sales and service. And at 14, I started telemarketing for him. So I had to call my own leads. I had to, you know, make my own sales to dentists. And then when I was 16, the deal was I got a car, but I had to go cold call on doctors to go with the car. So I got some really early sales lessons and marketing and business lessons. And so business was always a part of our lives. And yeah, we didn't really have money, though. As I grew up more and more, we had better and better vacations as my dad's business got more successful. So, you know, I wouldn't say that we were totally poor. We definitely weren't upper middle class. I don't know, we probably middle class, but I mean, I remember patches in my jeans and all sorts of stuff that, you know, the vacations that we had, you could see that they just kept getting better. Like it might be like 2 days at the beach, to then a week at the local beach, to then maybe a week in the Caribbean. And that was, you know, it kept getting better and better.
Did you feel that your dad taught you lots of positive lessons then about making money? Did he have that kind of mindset?
Yeah, I learned a lot of things watching him, like the way he treated customers. Like every year we'd go out, and for our best customers, he'd send them Christmas and holiday gifts and so forth. And that was really cool. You know, he appreciated the customers and would do something special for them every single year. I learned just a lot of things, just sort of watching what he did and how he dealt with the customers and what we did. And then at the same time, he gave me enough freedom that I could actually go off and experiment and do my own things. Like, so when I was about 17 or 18, one of my doctor clients, who I'd sold him his entire medical equipment clinic for all the equipment in there, he gave me a J. Abraham tape. And it kind of like turned the lights on for me. I'm like, oh, wow, this is really fascinating. Like, I don't have to cold call anymore, or I could just send out a letter or write an ad and have doctors call me. And I was just fascinated with it. And then I just started to learn as much as I possibly could in direct response and psychology and influence and copywriting, and then some self-development stuff, like Earl Nightingale was a big mentor of mine, just through tapes. And one of the things I really loved and picked up from him was that you become an expert in any subject by reading or studying it for 1 hour a day for 3 years, or a world-class expert for 1 hour a day for 5 years. And I really took that to heart. And I'm like, well, what would happen if you did it for 2 years or 3 years? Or sorry, 2 hours or 3 hours? And I just, went with that and just immersed myself. And then I'd go back to my dad, and I'd have these ads that I wanted to run. And I'm like, here, let's try this. And it'd be like full copy, and totally different than what anything we were doing before. And he's like, nobody's going to read on this. I'm like, let's just try this and see what happens. And so he gave me enough rope to experiment with, and then that really turned into a way that it helped build his company from a small regional player to much more of a national presence, because then the advertising that I was writing for us really was able to get doctors that before would have to only be able to sell the equipment face to face, that it made it possible that we could write these ads and have doctors literally give us their credit card for a really complicated piece of equipment, or check a little box that says, yeah, I want to see a demo. But now we're talking to people that are 7, 8, 9, and 10s on the scale of wanting to buy, and totally restructure the business. So that was cool. I mean, that was an ability to really kind of set my own course, and that was some of the first times that I could see a direct correlation to what I did to what the results happened.
And so then what happened for you to make the decision to go it alone?
Yeah, that's a tough decision, especially in a family business. And my dad gave me a great gift where you could tell, like, my original intention was that I was going to take over the family business, grow it, and keep growing it. And I don't know, at some point I'm like, that's not what I want to do, and I really want to make my own mark on things. And so he gave me a great gift where he allowed me. I had a business where I was taking my doctor clients that I was working with individually and consulting with them on how to get more patients. And then that turned into, I'm like, well, there's no leverage there. So that turned into me creating a course for other doctors on how to get more patients, mostly elective patients, like cosmetic patients. And sold the course for $900. And I got, I would be answering the phone, like, literally underneath my desk in my office. Like Silver Tree Group was the name of the first company. Like literally underneath the desk answering this. And my dad was pretty cool. I would use the fax machine there after work, and so orders would be starting to come in. And my dad let me start taking Fridays off, that I could just work on my business, and because he could see that I was pretty disengaged. I mean, literally at 5 o'clock on the dot, I'd punch out and then stay there, but I'd keep working on my business. And so it was a tough decision, but it was definitely probably one of the best decisions that I ever made. And I think almost any decision that you think is a tough decision turns out to be one of those best decisions ever. I actually love to get your take on it, when your big decision of leaving what you were doing. But yeah, 99 was when I left, and looking back, it was a great move. I mean, and I think about other big decisions that I've had in my life where, these are some of the ones that you just keep mulling over in your head, and like, your gut will tell you if you're happy or unhappy or what you should be doing, and it's just listening to more of that intuition, and even if you're not exactly sure what's going to happen, and what I left to do, and I left to go run my doctor information publishing business. That's definitely not what I'm doing now, and I've probably had 3 or 4 different changes even since then. But getting you on that positive forward path has been the biggest thing.
So when you started with that business, what is one of the significant obstacles that you faced when you first started? Can you remember anything that sort of stood out at that time that you managed to get over?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so something interesting, and I think a lot of lessons can be applied here, is I ran an ad for the course, and it was in dermatologic surgery, like a very specific niche industry publication, but I got 10 leads. And all I had done was a letter, and I had an outline of what the course was going to be of the product. I had a sales letter, and so I sent out the sales letter. I got no response. A couple weeks later, I sent out a second notice for the sales letter, no response. And 1 week after that, I sent out the third notice, and the deadline was impending. So we had a deadline on this order form. And literally on the last day of the deadline, it was like through the fax machine. And I'd been, running up to the fax machine every day for like weeks, hoping that it was in order. And finally got this order, and I'm like, yes! And got this order for $900. And so it just helped show that, that there was this positive energy around it, that it could actually work. And then I wrote to the doctor, I'm like, hey, this is being republished, and it'll be available within 30 days. We won't charge your card until then. But that gave me the energy to go literally punch out at 5 o'clock every day and work till like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning some nights, working on this outline of what I created that was going to be this course for these doctors that was taken from my private work with them. And so that was really powerful. And so the big lesson there is, sometimes go sell what you want to put out there before it's even totally finished or created, because that will give you that motivation to go further. And now, today, there's these cool sites out there that let you do some of this, like Kickstarter.com or Indiegogo, and there's a bunch of others. But it lets you go put something out there, create the selling video for it, and explain what it is, and you'll see what the marketplace tells you about it, because they'll tell you if you're onto something or you're not onto something.
So we're talking back then about decisions, and you were saying about that being a big decision. Being in business, you've got decisions all the time and they all land on your shoulders. Is there a particularly poor decision that you can remember making in your business, and how did you turn it around?
Oh, yeah, there's always poor decisions, but I'd rather make a decision than just keep noodling it over and over again. I mean, one of the interesting ones is like Maverick Business Adventures is one of my newer companies, about 4 years old, and so a lot of people tell you, follow your passion, do what you're really, really passionate about. And that was at a time when my internet publishing businesses were doing really well. We were making a lot of money, had a great reputation, had a great family. Things were just really going really incredibly well, but I wasn't 100% happy. And it seems crazy, and then I made, I'm a big fan of journaling. So in my journal, I made a list of, what I really wanted in my ideal business, and it's things like adventure and experience and hanging out with really interesting entrepreneurs and education and creating impact and giving and helping the next generation of entrepreneurs and all these different things. And so what I thought it was going to be was this Maverick Business Adventures thing, which was at the time of my life was I didn't have too many friends that would go off with me and go do some of these crazy adventures. So I figured, well, we'll make it for entrepreneurs and we'll combine it with business and we'll combine it with some sort of impact or philanthropy element to it. And that aspect is really cool, but the business model was a little bit off because, I always thought, well, we'd make revenue by creating a membership component to it, like a club. But it was so strictly based on the adventures that we weren't getting much traction at all just on that part. And because I was so passionate about it, I mean, I hired some people I didn't need to hire for a lot of money. Before we were even ready and before we even proved that there's a big marketplace for what we were doing at that level. I probably sunk about $300,000 or $400,000 into it, which was fairly significant, and probably even more importantly was that I wasn't always listening to the signals that the marketplace was giving me. Because I'm like, oh, we'll just this will totally work. We'll just do something else, put a little bit more money into it, or whatever the case is. And then on the other side of it, the other businesses were starting to go down a bit because I wasn't paying attention to them. And so I think getting wrapped up in that passion and not seeing the metrics that the marketplace were telling you were something that definitely affected me. And then when it got to the point where it's like, okay, well, you're either going to shut this business down because it's losing so much money, or you got to figure out how to make it work, that I really got in shape and created a new business model around it. And the model is this membership group called Maverick 1000, which is much more of like a global networking group of entrepreneurs that are really high level, influential, and exceptional, that are all out there to help each other and also have an impact in the world. And so now when we change it to that and not the adventures are secondary and they're optional for members, then we start to see some traction and things really picked up. But sometimes it takes getting hit over the head like 18 times, and for some people you can go further down that rabbit hole because you might have more resources. And so I didn't follow, like I have a great book out there that a lot of people have cited, and is one of our most popular blog posts called 34 Rules for Maverick Entrepreneurs. And one of those rules is bootstrap, and lack of money actually helps you get more creative, because when you can keep throwing money at something, it's going to hide and mask some of the issues going on. So I don't always take my own advice, and it definitely hurt me. Though looking back right now, we've created something that's even more interesting to me. Is we're creating this entire Maverick ecosystem for entrepreneurship, and from working with young entrepreneurs and creating an incubator for ideas, and working with these real high-level entrepreneurs, that it wouldn't have happened if I got that first hit out of the gate for what I wanted to do. So I'm actually thankful for those lessons. You know, I would be maybe a little more thankful if it would have taken 50,000 instead of 400,000 to learn them, but that's all right.
So do you have a strategy nowadays for making decisions? Do you have anything that you run through in your head? Any criteria?
The biggest one that I keep going back to over and over again, and I have to sometimes retrain myself to keep listening, is really my gut, my intuition. Like, it'll tell me what the right decision is, but sometimes I might try and back it up with logic about, oh, you know, that could be a really great opportunity or a good deal, or whatever the case is. But if I really, really went back and thought about it, my gut was telling me probably something different. So yeah, that's a big thing. And then I also think about, you know, where does this, it's easy for entrepreneurs to say yes to stuff. We're really good at saying yes and then overloading ourselves and then diffusing our focus. So I like to I'm trying to, you know, working on what decisions can I say yes to that are going to be part of this bigger picture of this ecosystem that we're building, and how do they line up against that? Not necessarily, is it just good for the short term kind of thing, but is it building something that we really want for the long term? So I use that as a criteria, but you know, quite frankly, it's the gut. I mean, that's one of the biggest things.
In the early days, was there any doubts that you had about your abilities?
You know, there's a certain voice inside your head that's always like telling you, well, you know, who are you to be successful, or who are you to do this? And it's just a matter of kind of, I don't know, just shutting them up and just telling that voice to just stop and not even listening to it. And I don't know if early on I learned this, but I've certainly been practicing it more and more, is you know, the journaling aspect that I talked about is one of the things that I like to do. Is I'll make a list of what I'm grateful for, or things that are going well, so positive progress. And it's a big deal because then, you know, our brains and eyes and ears only kind of selectively pick up on things that we're looking for. So in the absence of anything else, we'll really just, I don't know, for some reason we all turn negative. I think that might be kind of a natural state, or it's a lot easier, maybe evolutionary. We've been programmed to look for what is wrong, because that could mean that there's danger. So we naturally, you know, if something went great, like we just had our Underground 8 seminar, and it was an amazing event, but, you know, there's one or two things there that could have been better, and then those stick in your head if there's nothing else, and if you don't focus on the positive. So I will make a list of what is actually progressing and what's going well. Like, you know, as we're building out this whole big ecosystem, it's coming along a little bit slower than I even want. So I got to keep reminding myself, okay, this is the progress that we've made from point A to where we are right now, instead of looking at what the ideal might be, and when we never get to the ideal, because the ideal keeps moving forward. So the more you can do that, the more you can increase your confidence, the more you can get yourself in that positive frame of mind. And I'm not about just being a optimist for the sake of optimism, or thinking that, you know, we're looking at everything with rose-colored glasses, but it's when you really can start looking at what's going well, it creates like almost like a virtuous cycle that will keep increasing, and then you start looking for more of what's going well.
So do you have any mentors in the early days? Is there any people that particularly helped you or gave you some great advice?
Yeah, lots. I love, I think reading, I get so many of my mentors via reading or audio programs. I think it's the books that you read, the people that you meet, and the experiences that you have that influence your life the most. So Earl Nightingale, who I mentioned is very early on, and I'm a big fan of certain success foundational material. So it might be Earl Nightingale or Jim Rohn or this guy named Foster Hibbard was a big guy for me. So something like that to get your head on straight, or at least get some thinking around that. And then as far as just specific business-oriented marketing stuff, I mean, I was greatly influenced by Dan Kennedy and Ted Nicholas, Gary Halbert, so certainly marketing-related guys that have marketing thought processes, but also business-related. Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach has been a big mentor of mine. And the cool thing is I only knew these guys through their material previously, and then it's become almost this great full circle coming around. I don't know, I spoke on Dan Kennedy's stage several times, and I've had Ted Nicholas actually at an event that I created, and we had him do a copywriting day together, and so it's really cool when it starts. I don't know, you get to be able to meet some of your mentors and people that you really look up to, and so on. Certainly Richard Branson was on that list, as far as bigger business. So now my focus has really been about how do we build a business that has that impact, that has the fun and creates joy and happiness for everyone around it, and makes a lot of money. And so obviously Branson is big on that list for me. Tony Hsieh, Chip Conley, this guy Ari Weinswig from Zingerman. So all these guys, I don't know. It's really exciting because then I get to start meeting all of them too, and it's really interesting.
So what was the secret then to you actually building your credibility in the industry so you can get to meet these people?
I think it's been having my own spin on things where I'm always looking at what viewpoint can I provide that's different. That, if I simply would just parrot back what somebody else said, that doesn't create much value. So I'm always thinking about, one of our core values in our company and my life is I get rich by enriching others 10 times to 100 times what they pay me in return. So I'm always looking at where is the value and what we can do. And then, so that starts building an audience. And then once you've built an audience, then you can go to somebody who, you figure out what is interesting to them. Like if they have a book to push, can I help them push their book? And of course, at the same time, that means that, then maybe I get a chance to interview them, like what you're doing here. So you and I are starting to build a relationship. So I built relationships that way too, by using our media essentially, and our reach and our influence to help. And I don't do it in a, oh, okay, well, I want to get into, I want to figure out, I don't know, name some random person. I'd be like, oh, I want to meet them because they're really cool. I have to believe in what they're doing, and I have to believe in their message, and I truly want to spread that message to people that then follow me or look up to what we're doing. So I'm only interested in then giving them that viewpoint. Like one of the local kind of business owners who I look up to here in Washington, D.C. area is a guy named Ted Leonsis, who's owner of my favorite hockey team, the Washington Capitals, and he also owns a basketball team, and he owns a bunch of other stuff. And he came out with a book recently, The Business of Happiness. And if it was a complete crap book, I wouldn't have contacted him and be like, hey, let's do an interview and get it out there. I mean, I would have read the book and maybe contacted him personally, but the fact that it was a great book gave me a really great in to say, okay, let's do an interview, and I'd love to help you sell some of your books. Then that turned into a relationship where we actually had him speak at the Underground, I think last year or 2 years ago, and it turned into a relationship where, we're not like best friends, but it turned into a relationship where I got to sit in the owner's suite with him and hang out and then surprise my dad, who's a lifetime Capitals fan like I am, and I brought my little brother, and so it was really cool. And those kind of things start blossoming from there.
Yeah.
But
So
I think it comes from that original authenticity and the genuineness of wanting that connection for not just for, it'd be cool, but to really be able to share something that's meaningful.
for our audience who's watching this, could you break down into a couple of steps what would you recommend they start doing to build their credibility?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with having a point of view, and then from that point of view, creating good content, and having, deciding that you're going to be in it for a little while, and it's not like it's going to be a flash in the pan that, a bunch of my friends, they were going into new marketplaces, and they just made the decision that they were going to blog every day for like 30 days or 60 days and not go at the short term, like we're going to start selling stuff right away, but honing their voice, honing who is their audience, and sometimes polarizing their audience, which I think is a good idea. I don't think you should be plain vanilla and just attract anybody. I think people want to be, you want to start attracting these zealots and advocates for you and super fans, and so the only way to do that is by having a real point of view, and so you keep at it, and you're gonna get one comment on your blog, and you're gonna be like, oh, okay, and you're like, well, this sucks, maybe after a week, and you got to keep going, and it builds slowly sometimes, but then it's really amazing, like it's like this hockey stick curve that happens, because, and especially now with so much interconnectivity, that if there's something good to spread, it's going to get spread. And so your real goal is to create the content that is worthwhile to be spread, that creates an incredible value, that people will start looking at what you do and wanting to be a part of it, and then even maybe creating a mission. Like I'm a big fan, like this. My thinking is never, like when I first started my business, I was never like, okay, we're going to create a mission and I think deep down, it's always been about how do I help as many people as possible, but it was never let's get as many people together on this big mission of where we're heading. And our 2015 mission that I'm really excited about, and I think we're going to get people on board for this, is that it starts with getting 1 million people that I can get them reinvigorated about this whole Maverick philosophy of making more money, having more fun, enjoying happiness, and creating more impact. So getting 1 million entrepreneurs re-inspired into that. And then it gets into a little bit more social mission, where it's 100,000 scholarships. Like I made a big announcement at our underground that we're going to start doing for all our educational endeavors. We're going to give away 3 scholarships for every paid program. And it's going to be for young entrepreneurs, for returning military vets, and for people with disabilities, because they can all use the material that we have. So I think that's going to really, amp it up. And then it keeps going down from there. It's 10,000 startups who have made $1. And so, having that sort of mission gets people fired up, I think, and gets them excited.
Everybody's always focusing on building the biggest audience. Do you think it is about numbers, or is it more about just pleasing a smaller audience but having them be really rabid fans?
Yeah, it's definitely about, if you can do both, that's even better. But I would rather have a small group of rabid fans than a huge group that doesn't really pay attention to what you're saying or what you're doing. I've seen many times, like our top affiliates have small but powerful lists, because those guys jump when they say jump, because they trust them and know that they're going to put out great recommendations or for all sorts of stuff. But yeah, I think focusing on, if you start saying, well, we're going to go so broad, then many times you got to diffuse your message and you just water it down. But if you start with that core of what your essence really is, you'll get the right people.
So can you actually pinpoint a time in your career when things really changed? Is there a significant time that you can talk about?
Yeah, there's a couple pivotal times, I think. I think one of them is when we talked about where one of my doctor clients gave me a J. Abraham tape. I was kind of like, wow, the light sort of went on. So that was like 18, 19. Another total pivotal moment was when when I got the fax with the first order. I mean, I think that was a huge turning point. It was like, okay, something that I created and somebody actually paid me money for. I had all sorts of schemes and things as growing up. Like, I was always a paper boy, or I was, mowing people's lawns, or that's not true. I was mowing our own lawn, but my dad paid for it. I would go shovel snow when it snowed, so I'd always be out sort of hustling a little bit, but nothing really, like I couldn't point to something that I created. I'm like, oh wow, that made me money. So that was the very first product that was really exciting, that had that direct correlation. And then probably another pivotal moment was when I literally decided left my dad's business, went to work selling the medical guides that I was selling for doctors. And then I kind of saw the internet. This is like in 2000, late 99. I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. I have a lot of these skill sets that I think I can apply online. I know how to write copy. I know how to write sales letters. I can do this stuff. And so literally at 3 o'clock in the morning, I came up with the idea for my first online product called Instant Sales Letters. And I have no technical skills, still don't, can't put up my own webpage. But it took me a little while to get that up, maybe like a month and a half. And I still remember that first order coming in. So it's like for $29.95, and it was in your email box, and you're like, wow, okay, this works. So total pivotal moment. I think those pivotal moments are like when you're like, it clicked, or like something really, really worked. And that's incredibly exciting. And I certainly don't get tired of it, where it's something that you created, or an idea that you had, and then turning it into cash somehow is really interesting to me.
What do you think your unique ability is?
For me, I think it's changed. Like, I used to think copywriting was my unique ability, and like Dan Sullivan, the guy I mentioned before, who's one of my mentors, he talks about unique ability as having these 4 aspects. And one is like this, that you continually want to get better at it, that that gives you more energy, that you could do it all day, and you wouldn't be tired. And it's a couple other aspects. Like, you've always done it, and it comes natural to you. It doesn't take effort. So copywriting used to be that, and now I think it's more of an excellent ability. And then, so what I've broken it down to are 3 things, and I've gotten more distinctions on it as I keep thinking about it. Like, I used to think it was connecting with people, and I don't think that anymore. I think my unique ability on that part lies with creating a really incredible platform to connect the connectors, and so it's a little bit different. Like, I'm really good at, like, we've been doing this thing called Dangerous Dinner series, where like a couple times a year we put on a dinner, and it's some really unique, weird experience combined with the dinner, combined with something else. Like, we did a fire one where some of the food was on fire and the drink was on fire, and then we brought in a fire troop in Maui, and then actually the winners of this one little, and then you could go off and like practice the fire twirling and stuff like that. And then the winners got to go out actually on the beach, and they lit up and actually twirled fire. So, that creates a really cool, unique atmosphere. So I think that's what I'm really good at. So that part, I'm really good at ideas that have marketplace viability, but taking things from like a different angle. So I'm really good at seeing what ideas would work where, and combining different ideas together that have marketplace opportunities or gaps. And then I'm also really good at instigating mischief, like we talked about. So that's always been something that is fun for me. So I come up and create these games that we play sometimes at dinner, like one called Dinner Quirks, where people will randomly get texted a quirk or two that they have to perform during dinner, and not everybody knows that they're part of this game. Where it might be like your hands are magnetically attracted to anything metal, or you got to keep telling the waitstaff to remind you of something, or it could be talk about yourself in third person. So you have all these random quirks, and people are like, what is going on? And that so I love that stuff. So I like instigating a little bit of mischief for good or evil, and so I've gotten good at that, I guess.
So would you say that you have a formula then for coming up with your businesses?
No, no, there's not really a formula. There's, if it was, that would be too easy. I mean,
Or is there
there's
certain
certain
criteria?
yeah. Well, there's questions that I ask, and there's always I'm always looking at a couple key things. Like, I'm always looking at like we talked about 10x to 100x in value, right? So the question is, how can I provide 10 times to 100 times in value for this marketplace? I'm looking at, what is the ultimate benefit that they want, and how can I provide that for them, hopefully on a silver platter. So I look at things like, how do you create unique hooks or angles for your product or service? And one of them is the fish, which is, people keep saying, you've heard the saying, if you feed a man, or if you hand a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man a fish, you feed him for life. Well, it's kind of bullshit. People want the fish handed to them, and so that's what Instant Sales Letters was. It was a fish product. It was just phone-to-like sales letter templates for any sort of business owner. And so that's been one of the ways that we structured different businesses, is creating fish products or silver platter products. So I look at it from those aspects more than, are there very specific ways? I look at business models that make sense. I look at ways of, not creating one-time sales, but how do we turn it into a recurring revenue that makes sense, that also creates a lot of value and gets them to their ultimate benefit. So I look at things like that. I also look at, where I'm really good at finding hidden assets that people have or businesses have and redeploying them. And so like one guy who is a Maverick member, I was working with him, and he has this amazing ability to spot property. He creates these real estate syndicates of people investing like $50 to $100 or $250,000 for commercial properties, and he's a great track record. And so we were talking about, well, he wants to teach that, and I'm like, yeah, it's not that exciting. I mean, there's a lot of people teaching that, but what you could really do is combine all that together and say, for his, we made it a $25,000 program where you learn exactly what he was doing, looked over his shoulder, but at the same time, you got a 25% equity in the deal. So, I mean, it was like a total win-win. Like, why wouldn't you pay for that and get the educational part of it? So I'm really good at coming up with that. And so there's ways of thinking about business ventures that I look at.
And do you test your products as soon as you've made them, or do you test them before they're finished?
Yeah, I mean, as much as we can. I love throwing it out to, like, I don't like surveys, because I think people will tell you what you want to hear, or they sometimes don't even know what they totally want. So I like to test stuff by, having people vote with their wallets. And so if we can put a small test out when somebody can actually buy something, that to me is a much better indication of viability for the marketplace, or what that idea is, than anything else. And so in that aspect, the faster we can get it out there, the better you'll be able to see. And so there's a new methodology out there that's been getting some ground called the lean startup. And a lot of internet marketing people have been doing lean startup. It's just been called something differently, but it takes into effect tracking and figuring out. Okay, put something out there, see if anybody buys, and then getting to what they call MVP, which is your minimal viable product. So instead of having this big product that has a lot of features, a lot of things going on, try to just come up with something minimal that is worth putting out there and seeing what people would do with it once it's out there, and then you can always make it better.
Is there any lessons that you can share with us that you've learned then about pricing your products? It's something that I think a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah, I mean, the pricing, so once again, I think about, what's the value? So the 10 times to 100 times value. So if we are delivering that, then I'm never, ever, ever a fan of low-cost pricing. I think it leads to too many situations where you gotta only compete on price, and if you only compete on price, then there's no value differentiators there. So I much rather try and create my own marketplace or my own category so that I don't have to compete on price. And I'd rather have a premium price, so then we can create a much more premium experience for the customer too, and end user, and have higher margins, because you can do more, you can advertise more, you can buy customers at a higher dollar amount. And if you can buy customers at a higher dollar amount than your competitors, then you'll win every day. So those are some things that I look at. And as far as pricing, there's also a psychology to pricing too. Like, if I went out tomorrow and I'm like, oh, I'm going to buy a Ferrari, and you tried to sell me your Ferrari for $1,000, I'd be like, what the hell's wrong with this Ferrari? You're like, no, nothing. It's it's a special deal. But there's definitely a psychology that goes with price, and having that premium price. A lot of times, people associate a high price with a high quality product, and so it would then be our job to deliver on that. I mentioned Tony Shea before from Zappos. Like they don't do couponing, or very, very rarely, because they would much rather invest in their customer support and service and make that their differentiator. And they can't afford to bring in U.S. customer support team if they're only able to compete on price. So, I've actually taught a lot of people that I've worked with, like, sometimes it's even about adding an extra zero and just holding your breath and putting it out there. Your price is, I don't know. I mean, don't look at the marketplace to tell you what the price is. I look at what the internal product is itself and what is the value delivered. Like, that first product, the $900 for the cosmetic surgeons, the manual. I mean, that was probably underpriced, and what it cost me. A lot of people equate price with cost, right? It cost me like $40 to deliver this thing. It was a 3-ring binder with a diskette. It was a diskette at the time, with some pre-done ads for liposuction or whatever, and an ad and different things, and a couple other reports that were like coil bound. It cost me maybe $40. So then somebody would be like, oh, good, you should probably price that at $80 or $100. Well, I underpriced it because every new patient to them is worth about $3,000. So I should have been charging probably $2,000 or $3,000, and maybe even more.
So what do you think are some of the key things for people to demonstrate then when they're trying to show their value? How can they communicate that with their customers?
Well, the value has to be communicated as far as benefits. So it's never about what the thing is, but a good analogy is I don't want the drill. I want the holes that the drill can make. So if we can break that down, it's never talking about the features, but it's talking about what are the benefits, and so what. And a good way of doing that is just literally writing a sentence like "you get:" and then bullet point, bullet point, bullet point of what they get. And so if you think about it in that aspect, then you'll have to provide the value. And, one of the other ways that I like to provide value, and I showed in my copy, is that we do an apples to oranges comparison sometimes. So a lot of people are like, oh, if I'm selling, like, for instance, I had a little ebook that I created with my personal trainer called Get Fit While You Sit, which is like how to get in shape while you're at the computer or whatever. It's kind of a goofy little product. But instead of me comparing it to other videos or DVDs or whatever that are fitness, I compared it to, how much are you spending at the gym, or how much, did you buy that crazy Nordic track for, or whatever, off an infomercial, whatever the case is, or how much it would cost to have a personal trainer. So I'm never about comparing something specifically to what it would be its closest competitor, because, you get to set the rules. I'm a big fan of that, so why not create an unfair competitive advantage for yourself by making that comparison.
Do you actually have a metaphor then for making money?
Yeah, definitely value. I think you're always rewarded in proportion to the value that you provide. So, I keep harping on this, that 10x, 100x. Even in the free stuff, right? The value is, their attention. So if you're going to put out free content, make it worth their attention. And for paid stuff, yeah, it's just such an easy, natural law is the value. And it all comes back down to that. So no real metaphor. I do have maybe a little different way of looking at it too. Like there's 3 connecting circles that I talk a lot about. Which, make more money, have more fun, joy, happiness, and the impact. And I literally think that those all affect your money making potential. Like the more impact that you can have, it actually will increase your dollars created. Like look at Tom's shoes, where they did the 1-for-1 shoe model, and that becomes a selling story that's easily kind of goes viral from person to person. Or you look at your fun and how happy your team is, or how happy you are, and I think that all affects it. That all affects how much money that you're making. So, I mean, those are, I don't know, maybe some of the things that I think about that maybe not everybody else does if they're just strictly focused on the make more money part.
How did you actually feel then when you first started making serious money? What was your thinking back then? Were you comfortable with it?
That's a good question. It's very interesting. And I had a blog post that I wrote about this a while back where I said, do your wants create your success? Like, for me, it was always, I had like a couple material ones. Like, I really wanted a Rolex watch or something like that, or then the fancy car. And I think originally those are really powerful and probably good motivators because it forces you to do what it takes to get there. But then you pretty quickly realize that those are sort of meaningless and don't have that much, like the Rolex I gave away to my cousin, like I don't care about it anymore. And I have a fancier watch that I wear sometimes, but a lot of times I wear this watch, which is like this little orange watch that I bought for like $100. So sometimes I think it takes getting to a certain level where you can realize what really is important. And so I always had rules set up in our business because I think if you set up like early on, even like in my investing stuff, I like hands-off investing. Like I'll do like dollar cost averaging or something like that, where every month we'll go into a particular fund that I've decided on. So I like easy stuff like that where I don't have to think about it. And if the dollar amounts change, I don't have to think about it. So like we always made a rule of like 5% of our revenue would go to different causes that I believe in. So then the checks just got bigger, and that's just part of our rule. So yeah, I mean, I went out and definitely spent on all sorts of fun, fancy stuff and loved it. But I also had enough put away that was part of my rules that regardless of what happened, would be good. I don't know. I think it's interesting. I mean, I don't think I've changed too much. I mean, certainly some of my physical surroundings have changed, and money opens up new opportunities for people. But I've always said that money amplifies who you are. Like if you're a generous person, then it gives you the opportunity to be more generous. And if you're adventurous, it gives you the opportunity to do way bigger and better adventures. So I wouldn't be going off Baja racing in Mexico and doing all the crazy stuff that I was doing, unless we were doing well. Like I might go, I don't know, do a quick afternoon of race car driving or something like that. But you can still do this. You can still have those same experiences. But then if you're a complete jerk, and money just gives you this opportunity to be like this amazingly bigger jerk. So it totally amplifies, I think, the person.
So you mentioned a bit then about what earning money has enabled you to do. I know that you are involved with some charities and things like that.
For me, it's always been about entrepreneurship. I think entrepreneurship has just even the mindset of it has opportunity to open up so many pathways for people that no matter what situation that they're in, and with with the world that we're in right now, it's pretty amazing time to be living where the interconnectivity and the fact that technology, we can get a tablet now. There's going to be tablets available for $50 or $100 or $25 that are going to be able to connect people to just this limited amount of education and content, and it's just so amazing. And then what's going to happen with it, and micro lending, and all these different things coming together to really create this world of abundance. And there's a great book out by Peter Diamandis right now called Abundance, which I'm really excited about. But as far as the things that I'm involved in, it's always around self-sustaining causes, something that I don't like just giving money that goes down a black hole that I don't know exactly where it goes. Like I'd rather create seeds that continue to flourish. So like I'm involved in one, and we actually do a trip to Haiti every year with the Mavericks, and it's with this Caring House Foundation, which my friend Frank McKinney started. And he's this guy that builds these massive $20, $30 million houses on the beach in Florida, and then uses some of the profits there to create these self-sustaining villages. And so working together with Frank, I've really enjoyed it because we get to build the villages, but then there's a self-sustaining economic engine attached to it too. Like there might be a fishing co-op or something like that that helps the village then get, off their feet, so they're actually contributing value, and they're doing something that it's not just a handout anymore. So I'm also big with the Village Enterprise Fund, where for a couple $100 you can train a micro business in East Africa, and that affects like 5 or 6 of their family members. So I really love stuff like that. I'm also heavily involved with Virgin Unite, which is Richard Branson's group of charities, because they use entrepreneurial thinking to solve some of the biggest social and economic issues and things facing the world right now. So I think all of it comes back to entrepreneurship, and that's where my real passion is. And I get involved with NIFTY, which is Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship, which works with at-risk kids in high schools, and I actually volunteer a couple times a month to come into a high school and teach them about entrepreneurship. And so, yeah, I mean, it all comes back to entrepreneurship. I mean, that's the biggest passion for me.
What drives you to keep constantly moving forward with your business?
Biggest thing right now driving me forward is kind of creating a new business model where it's not just me operating it, but I'm bringing in different profit partners and trying to create these little spin-offs that, as part of this ecosystem that we're building, that literally support each other in these little pieces. And like I mentioned, that 3-for-1 scholarship option, where that's going to create this massive talent pool of people that get trained up on 21st century skills, that are internet marketing, digital marketing skills. So, and then also training on entrepreneurial thinking. So I really just want to create this massive ecosystem that has a huge ripple effect, and that's what keeps me going, is to see what we can do there. And of course, there's a financial component to it, but that's kind of just a way of sort of keeping score of what the value is that you're providing. But the real driver is how many people's lives can we change, and at the same time, we should be rewarded for it. But can we change their lives and also change their thinking or enhance the thinking with, okay, it's not just about a dollar, but it's about, creating more joy in their lives and creating more impact. And that just keeps driving everything forward and forward. So that 2015 mission, and then, the big 2020 mission is 1 million startups, which then I have to have way bigger thinking of how to make that happen. So those kind of challenges really drive me and get me excited.
Fantastic. Well, that was my final question.
Yeah, thanks very much, Angel. This was fun. Some good, different questions than what I normally get asked, so that's awesome. And, if people want to check out what we're doing, but Maverick Startup is a new book that we have coming out that talks about how to go from scratch to 6 figures and beyond. There's a good little 11 X factors in there that most people don't really think about. Some of the stuff we talked about, like creating the zealots and the value propositions and different things like that. And then they can probably just check me out at yaniksilver.com or maverickmba.com is a good one for my blog too.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Yanik.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.